Hello and welcome to Castle of Horror, the show dedicated to horror movies and awesomeness. This week, we have a film that I've actually been looking forward to talking about for a long time, the 1985 film, The Midnight Hour. This is episode 385. Bear in mind, if you haven't seen today's movie, we're going to be discussing it from the perspective of horror fans who have seen it. So warning, spoilers ahead. From Denver, Colorado, I'm your host, Jason Henderson, publisher at Castle Bridge Media, home of the Castle of Horror anthology. With me from Austin is Tony Salvaggio, lead singer and bassist of the band Deserts of Mars, and lead guitarist of the band Rise from Fire. Say hello, Tony.
Howdy.
Howdy. Also in Austin, Mr. Drew Edwards is the writer-creator of the long-running underground comic Halloween Man, which you can get at Global Comics. He is a Best Writer Ringo nominee, Austin Chronicle Best of Austin Award winner, and a member of the PEN America Fellowship. Say hello, Drew.
It's gonna be a weird night.
Yeah, that line, good line. It doesn't actually, he says it sort of triggered by something not all that weird, which is him bumping into the popcorn bowl. But still, he's right though. It's going to be a weird night. All right. Okay. The Midnight Hour is a 1985 American made-for-television comedy horror film that I love, and that's why we're talking about it. Directed by Jack Bender, starring Shari Belafonte-Harper, LeVar Burton, Peter DeLuise, Dedee Pfeiffer, Dick Van Patten, who else? Kurtwood Smith, Kevin McCarthy. Like it's a
Wolfman Jack.
Wolfman Jack. Wolfman Jack of American Graffiti is basically doing it again in this movie. It is so wild how much is crammed into this film. Its plot focuses on a small New England town that becomes overrun with zombies, witches, vampires, and all other kinds of demons of hell after a group of teenagers unlocks a century-old curse on Halloween. It appeared on ABC November 1st, 1985. It appeared the day after Halloween, which some executive, certainly Jack Bender, were probably like, what the actual fuck, people? Like, why would you do that to my movie? In addition to an original musical number, Get Dead, the film's soundtrack features songs by, and I was amazed at this, and maybe this is why it's not on Blu-ray anywhere, Wilson Pickett, Creedence Clearwater Revival, Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs, Three Dog Night, The Smiths. Shari Belafonte-Harper was just tweeting about this film like 8 months ago, saying she would be totally down for a sequel if Jack Bender wanted to do it. And I cannot imagine anything more delightful. And so, okay, let's get our opening thoughts. We'll go Tony and Drew, and then I'll go. Julia is off traveling the world with our 17-year-old, and we'll be back next week. So we're not hiding her. She's just and she didn't deliberately opt out of this movie. That I know of. She's just I think she's in the air right now. So Tony, why don't you go first? Opening thoughts. The Midnight Hour.
This is a fun movie. Maybe not a great movie, but a fun movie. It's cool to see. It's got such an all-star cast.
Yes.
And it evidently, I think musical rights were just different back in the day, and so it's got a kind of surprising soundtrack.
Yes.
Full of hits, which was cool. It's not a subtle movie by any stretch. But it's got its own kind of crazy rules. It's fun. I think it's cool to go back to these TV movies. I wish they were more readily available.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it? I know it could never happen, but wouldn't it be cool if there was like a Roku channel or something that was just all TV movies, just all the time? Like, and I know now that, ABC would want to do their, hey, we have control over our ABC specials, and NBC, every network would want to do that.
Sure.
But in an era where there were pretty much only 3 networks, there were UHF channels, but the brunt of TV movies were on one of 3 networks, and there were many of them, and there were specials. It would be amazing if if all the channels just put out there, like,
oh, absolutely,
here's where you go to watch all of these specials and movies.
Well, they've all got these their OTT services, which in theory could have a library as big as they want to have it, because whatever,
Right.
just terabytes of storage, right? So I mean, pick your poison. I'm sure it has something to do with music clearance.
Oh, I'm sure there's multiple. I mean, who knows if they even have any of the masters for anything,
Yeah.
But boy, would I like to see. I mean, now that the savior of this is, strangely enough, YouTube and
Yes.
Internet Archive and stuff like that, and those rights get weird, and I don't always advocate, but I mean, sometimes that's the only way to see a made-for-TV movie anyway. I think it's neat. It's got such a cool cast, and it's a lot of fun to watch. I always just enjoy the kind of goofiness and the idea that this was, hey, this is on TV. Here you go, everybody.
Yeah. This is what a third of you are going to be watching tonight.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, my gosh.
So crazy. But yeah, it's enjoyable and fun.
Thank you. Drew, what about you?
To Tony's point, I could pick the stuffing of this movie by pointing out its faults, but like I don't think that this is the sort of thing that really benefits for going through a traditional critical lens, I guess, because it is a TV movie from the mid 80s.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it definitely gets you in the Halloween spirit. It's a great example of like what a lot of people call kiddie horror or starter horror, I
Yeah.
think. I think it really, works as that, and it's actually legitimately atmospheric in a few places.
Yeah.
The
Right.
monster makeup is not amazing, but in some cases it's pretty decent. Like the soundtrack is of course great, the cast is great. I am a bit mystified, Jason, that you love this movie when you're always saying
Yeah.
I don't like stuff with broad comedy.
I know.
And this is crammed to the gills with it.
I know. So let me. I don't know if I can mount a defense of that right away, because you're right. I don't like broad comedy, and yet I find myself really drawn to this film. I've watched it many times. I think I'm really amazed by its tonal shifts. It's crazy. It's a crazy film because it is. You're right. It's basically a TV kiddie horror kind of thing, except for it's about horny teenagers, and it is a remarkably often disturbingly violent / zanily erotic, weirdly giallo. Like there's just to jump ahead. There's a scene where Shari Belafonte gets turned into a vampire, where in a weirdly erotic scene with her arisen great grandmother, who like seems so turned on to turn her into a vampire, and there's like ejaculating wine bottles all over the place, like shooting
years before Francis Ford Coppola.
It is so weird, and and it reminds me of like Argento at his Gonzoist, right? And I was like, what the fuck is going on? This is an ABC film, and yet it's just I get the feeling that Jack Bender, who's an amazing director, very very reliable all the way to today. He was a director on Game of Thrones, and he's also there's so many things that may very well just be Jack Bender fetishes, for want of a better word, where and he's getting away with a lot.
Well,
so
also what I go back to, remember that the thing about these movies is you have to sell ads during these movies,
right?
Like you had to go, what I mean, that's Halloween, so it benefits from like you kind of have a built-in Halloween ad stream, right? Like, oh, we're gonna have Halloween candy, and there's probably a Halloween Budweiser commercial that
sometimes this movie looks like a Halloween Budweiser commercial. I mean, by the way,
but to think about it, you have to pass all the people who are like, well, Twix isn't going to go for the wine scene or what, any number of things.
Yes.
I'm always amazed at that too, because oftentimes we'll discuss it, and like Drew said, like there's many things to rip apart. It's an unsubtle, all over the map kind of just crazy kitchen sink movie. But again, when you have a special like this, you don't want to alienate your sponsors or people watching, and maybe they just put it on or like, Well, we know it can't go opposite this other crazy thing. Like the NBC's probably going to win tonight because they have, whatever.
Whatever they've
Like
got.
I'd
Yeah.
have to look it up and see what it was opposite at the time. But either way, you have a ton of people who are involved in making sure that this doesn't alienate people, that it gets some kind of draw, and this is what you have exactly like horny teen movie
Yeah.
on a network.
Well, if it was
Crazy
just
monsters.
a tad more violent and there was actual sex in it,
Right.
like this would play all right next to like Return of the Living Dead or
Right.
Yeah,
No,
just
you're
some
totally right.
nipples really would. All
yeah.
you'd need is just a little bit of nudity, and it would be an R-rated picture. And then
Well,
it would have really
some
dumb.
gore
Yes.
probably, but
Yeah.
like it veer. You are right. It does veer wildly from being very family friendly to like you said, horror. So like you have zombies. Zombies don't get to eat anybody, but they strangle people and try to bash people's heads in with
Yes.
rocks. And you got a werewolf that there's no blood, but he still mauls a guy.
Yes.
Like it's a weird. The tone is kind of
Yeah.
all over the place, but and of course, all because it's an 80s movie, all these supposed teenagers look like they're 30.
Yes.
So
To
there's that
our
too.
to our everlasting thanks. Honestly, this is a great looking cast. Shari Belafonte has never been sexier than in this film. It's she looks wonderful. Everybody just looks fantastic. The substitute teacher who's making out with Peter DeLuise, by the way, in a Buena Vista distributed, often playing on Disney Channel 1980s movie. The substitute teacher who's dressed up like David Bowie. She looks great. A little gender non-specific, but this is a movie that goes all kinds of weird places and just
Well,
gets yeah.
also like levels of inappropriateness that she is making out with her student.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's nuts. And again, this this is a Disney film. I don't know what to make of that. Okay, we can start working our way through it. The film takes place in a little town. Actually, now I've forgotten the name of the town. Pitchford Cove, Massachusetts, which is a whatever. It's a Salem-like town that looks a lot like the Universal backlot. And actually, Peter DeLuise responded to me on Twitter and said, "Yes, it's the Universal backlot." He goes, and there were a couple of driving scenes that were off the lot. But other than that, it's all where Back to the Future takes place. It's just a familiar spot that we've seen 1,000 times.
I thought it was shades of Hill Valley when
Oh yes,
when I was watching it.
yeah, for sure, and a million other things. But yeah, so this is a little town. You've got these great kids who are in high school, and they decide that they're gonna go break into the town museum to steal. This is their crazy ass idea for what a wild idea for Halloween will be. And I'm not even being all that sarcastic because it's awfully tame, really, because they don't live in a world where they think you can raise the dead or anything. They're gonna break into this closed museum, steal some 300-year-old costumes and wear them to the party at the big haunted mansion in the town. The mansion belongs to Shari Belafonte-Harper, her family. It belonged to her great grandmother, Lucinda, who was an evil sorceress who was put to death. So yeah, these opening scenes are where you kind of meet these teenagers as they hang out with one another and kind of get to know their families, and also become aware that they are just not remotely teenagery. It's Drew, to your point, they all seem about. I mean, LeVar Burton may well be very young. I can't. I have no idea how, but he looks like he could easily be 25. I just don't know.
They're just very mature looking.
Oh yeah.
Like it. But I mean, this is by no means abnormal. Like these kids could also be in did a 13th movie and they would look
Right.
more or less the same, like, because usually, and I mean, this continues to this day a lot of the times.
Yes.
Usually when people are casting teenagers in movies, they cast people in their 20s, and if it's a low budget, sometimes even older.
Yes.
So like it it gives it a certain 80s flavor, I think that I enjoy. It takes me back. Like, I don't remember when I first saw this movie, but I'm pretty sure I did see it on TV. I don't know if it was when it was brand new or if it was a rerun, but like there's a nostalgia factor there.
Well, I absolutely did not see it. I mean, I was not aware of it until, probably within the last 10 years. For whatever, it just completely escaped my radar. I would have been, young when this movie came out, but I just never came across it, which is crazy. But which is funny because I watched Friday the 13th 1,000 times, but no, I never.
Maybe because you were a little too old to be watching Halloween specials at that point.
No, that's very possible. Yeah. It looks like it came out on VHS in '89. And by that time, I probably was, I was headed off to college, so I probably wasn't running a lot of tapes, and I just never noticed it. So, movies that come out in your era can just kind of like just walk between the raindrops and not be noticed, by you. So I should mention the movie did not get good reviews. It's because considering that I love this movie and forced you guys to watch this movie, everybody and both of you pointed out, there's a million problems with it. The problems are the only thing that the critics saw. The critics kind of were like,
Sure.
I don't.
I mean,
get it.
that's not outside the realm, though.
Yeah.
Especially with horror. Horror on TV already was an uphill battle in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
And
except for adult horror, like TV movies that would be like with Elizabeth Montgomery or something like that. But yeah,
possibly. But even then, you're going to get a lot of critics like, oh, it's just the slasher stuff or what. Like, I think in general, horror on TV, got a lot of critical ire at the time anyway. There's exceptions, of course, but it's it's a little bit harder sell, or it's or easily written off as, well, I guess the teenagers will probably like it,
right?
That kind of that's the kind of response that you're expected to get. So when you do a hey, in this case especially, like it's meant for like, I guess the teenagers will like it.
Except I think this skews a little, horniness aside, I think this skews, or at least it's intended to skew, maybe preteens and perhaps a little younger. Like it's not quite, it's not quite like a. I'm trying to think of what would have been the 80s equivalent, but you have stuff like Halloween Town or whatever.
Yes,
sure. I guess it's like, okay, the Halloween that almost wasn't. That's another Halloween special.
Okay, fair. And I did watch that one.
Yeah, it's not quite that, like, which is like,
this is way more mature than that one, which is saying
but
a lot.
It's definitely not like, it definitely feels softer. It's not Dream Warriors or something like that. It's like the movies that I was already being allowed to watch, by the way. So like, you could take that parenting how you will, but this Liz is in a very nebulous space as far as like just who this is intended for. And sometimes, because this isn't the first time I've seen
is Wilson Pickett intended for the 16-year-olds? Because I have no idea.
No, there's actually a point where like it's playing Creedence Clearwater Revival, and like Kevin McCarthy like freaks out and like smashes the radio and goes, "You kids and your damn noise," and I was like, really? You kids and your Creedence Clearwater?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
like,
Because
and I
truly,
mean,
in that era, when this movie came out, Creedence would have been classic rock. Yeah,
yeah,
we
and
would have called it classic. The rest of the movie is called oldies. I mean, the rest of the songs that they're playing, because they play they play a lot of 1950s songs in here.
well, the 80s has a certain preoccupation with the 50s. This movie is no exception.
That makes sense.
Right.
That's very possible. Yeah. And it may be, even if the kids aren't familiar with Devil or Angel, right? They nevertheless they get it. If you're playing it, they get, oh, that sounds very 50s. So they get the notion but it's funny that like the 90s kids who were into swing music, these teenagers seem to be into 1950s music, which I find weird and hilarious. And that's kind of cool. So they head out to the cemetery. So after they break into the museum, they get a scroll that is very old and sealed with a stamp that belongs to the great witch who was put to death.
Well,
And
no, the ring belonged to the Witcher.
the Witchfinder. Yes, of
Yeah.
course. You're exactly right. Yes, I'm sorry. So I don't remember why they decide to do this, but they decide to head out to the cemetery to read the curse, and they wind up reading the curse aloud. I don't remember what the plot point is on why they
They
decide to do
just
that.
decide at the time. They just decide to, like, hey, look, it's like everything else, because time's also nebulous in this.
True.
Like the time between them leaving school and then it getting super dark, and then, oh wait, it's a couple of hours to the party.
Yeah.
Like, and then until midnight. None of the
Right. This is a
it's
12
all
hour
over the
evening.
map. Yeah, because like
Yeah.
they go, and why they feel the need to steal the costumes from the museum is baffling as well. But it's what you do to make this movie.
The actors are selling the idea that these human beings, would hear those ideas and go, that sounds like a really cool idea. And
Exactly.
I'm not being sarcastic, like they should know better that they're going to raise the dead, but these are kind of lame ideas, and so, but
Are they
LeVar Burton,
though? Like, if you're like a teenager in
maybe
a
not,
small
maybe.
town. Well, no, I'm just saying, like,
I
I'm not saying it's not a bit absurd, but like, I'm saying, like, you're a teenager, you're in a small town.
Yeah.
There's not much to do. You kind of have to make your own fun.
I guess you're right.
This
Yeah.
town has this preoccupation with witches and whatnot. Like,
Yes.
Okay.
All right.
It isn't like, it isn't like let's do cocaine off, each other's cleavage, and like listen to Joy Division.
It's bizarre. It's random. It's like if we're hanging out in high school, and by the way, these high school, I have to say, clothing wise and everything, these guys look like people I went to high school with. But if you're hanging out in high school and you go, hey, I have this idea, let's go climb the Waterbury and throw water balloons at the people cruising the strip. That's a dumb idea and kind of lame, and yet I can totally see one guy having and go, oh, that sounds cool. Yeah, yeah, okay, 8:00, we're gonna go climb on top of the Waterbury, because it's Texas and you got nothing else to do. And so I guess, but what I mean is, for an adult, you're watching it and you're going, that sounds random. You could just go home and, watch TV or something. So the actors have to do the heavy lifting of saying, oh, that sounds cool. So then they decide to go to the graveyard, and then Shari Belafonte. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
This part, like the idea of just going to the graveyard. When I was a teenager, my friends and I did do that a lot. Like, we would just go hang out in the graveyard because for some reason it felt transgressive or something.
I get it. Oh, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
Like Rain did as well. She was telling me. There weren't any real graveyards where I lived, so it wasn't really. I mean, there were, but nothing. It wasn't like a town graveyard like this, or even slightly.
It wasn't
bigger
a big
towns,
spooky graveyard.
Yeah, but also, if the choices were where I lived, if the choices were drive 20 minutes and maybe 20-30 minutes, and maybe also find the graveyard, drive the extra 15 and go cruise the actual town that's closest that had a theater and stuff. So that was the difference. But yeah, I remember Rain saying that she and her friend, they would just go out there. And,
did she watch this with
out.
you?
No, she should have probably.
She might dig this
for some reason. Yeah, it was
actually.
Yeah.
So Shari Belafonte-Harper reads the incantation. This is the part that is hilariously well. Actually, didn't they do this in Dead by Dawn?
It's very shades of Evil Dead.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm just trying to remember if Ash picks up a scroll and reads from the Necronomicon or anything like that, or because
In Evil Dead, it's a recording
okay,
they turn on. But
Right.
in Army of Darkness, he reads from a book.
okay. So here you just have her, because she's kind of a performer, she reads it, she goofs around about being in a trance. But bottom line, she reads the entire curse from her great 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 grandmother about, that will bring all the demons of hell, that's the term they use, back to life. And that also includes the random dead, by the way. But so I do want to get into the next scenes, like what's going on with Kevin McCarthy. But before we do that, we should just talk about the premise of this movie, which is that there's a curse out here. When you read it on Halloween night, which is a special night, then this curse will take place, and all manner of monsters will just jump out and start rampaging across the town. And that's the conceit. It's weird, isn't it? I mean, to have both werewolves and zombies and witches.
It's just an excuse to kind of and vampires.
Yes, that's right.
Like it's just an excuse to have to do the monster mash.
Yeah, you're right.
Let's have every kind of monster we can,
which is great.
Because it's great Halloween logic. Let's do it.
Right. Yes, you're right. This could have been a sketch on like a Bob Hope or Lucille Ball special, except for it's been blown out to like 2 hours. Some neat effects at time, but yeah. Well, I mean, that they have to stretch for time because they add in like a 5-minute song and dance that everybody does, like for the camera. That's so we're in a clear. So in fact, I'd like to talk about the entire premise. So because at the end, when they do the things that they're supposed to do, which is to put the curse back, what we don't have to walk through this movie chronologically. What happens? Because the zombies and the demons and the vampires are working to try to like take over. The vampires are the smartest, of course, always, and so this vampire Lucinda is trying to take over her descendants and take over the town. But
it's a revenge plot, really, because she was Lucinda when she was human was a witch that was hung,
put to death. Yep.
Yeah, and now she's back for revenge. So like that, I mean, they never really go to like what her long game is, but that's the short version.
Well, so what's wild is these, and there's I like the variety of the monsters here, because you're right about, once you just take it as the premise that any kind of monster is from hell and therefore is returning now, and also random dead people. It's awesome. I mean, like there's we'll get to the scene with Shari Belafonte's vampirism in a sec, but there's like a zombie wandering around who's a really talented actor. This guy, the guy who does all the zombie mime shtick, I loved that. I thought he was fabulous. He's in his own movie. I mean, nobody else is like him at all. He's
right,
but it's really good. Let me see if I can find. I cannot find a link to this actor who plays that zombie. So I may have to figure that out later. But
there's a couple of quote unquote main zombies, because there's also like a serial kill. Like, I'm kind of bummed me out that they didn't do more with this, but there's a serial killer that's buried in the cemetery that comes out, and he's also going and exacting revenge. He takes out the town judge,
yes.
But like it's like they really, what this movie does do is it gives every monster species, for lack of a better term, like a few scenes unto themselves. Like there's a couple of scenes that are just werewolf scenes. There's a couple of scenes that are just like vampire scenes. And so it's almost that weird way. It's almost like you're getting kind of an anthology movie.
Yes.
you
Yeah,
know,
that's a
and
good
then of
point.
course you have this tacked on character, well, not tacked on character, but this other more benign character, which is like the horny cheerleader ghost.
I love her.
Yeah.
I love her, you know, rather uncomplicated, cheerful horniness. I mean, she is a neat character, and also kind of a break from the notion that the 50s was a sexless era. You know,
Yeah.
so she's great. I found out Mark
Honestly,
Blankfield is the zombie I'm thinking of, by the way. Continue. Sorry.
honestly, the hero, like, you know, is unlike every he's like I have a hard time believing him as a teenage boy, if only because he keeps kind of shucking off this girl. Like, she is, it's kind of progressive that she's the one that is the
Yeah.
aggressor
Yeah.
in this relationship. Like, she's the one that's always coming on to him.
Yes.
It's not the other way, because he's a real, you know, milk toast kind of guy. Like,
Yeah, he's a milquetoast kind of guy, but you're right that it is inconceivable that she would be throwing herself at him in quite the way that she is in this movie, and he's like, "Now enough of that, Stella." You know, it's just so bizarre. That
really,
actor is Lee Montgomery, by the way. He's Canadian, and he was the dance partner of Sarah Jessica Parker in Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
did
It's also in Burnt Offerings, I noticed. Which
Oh, really?
that's right,
I don't
yeah.
remember him in it. Huh? Was he the kid?
that's I can't remember. I
Well,
just saw him. I was
Oh, let's
looking it
see.
up earlier, and I was like, oh yeah.
Yes, he's the child, the one who gets killed. Spoilers for Burnt Offerings. Move 5 seconds forward if you want to hear this. He's the one who gets killed by the chimney. Yeah, at the end of Burnt Offerings. So yes, he's wow. That's
Speaking
unbelievable.
of their clothes, though, Jason, have I seen pictures of you wearing glasses not dissimilar to his glasses?
I
Did you
mean,
own a pair of glasses like
probably
that
when I
back
was
in?
a kid. He's got these big black plastic frames that you know, as a kid I probably had some glasses like that. By the time I was in high school I didn't, but you know.
I swear I've seen a picture of you in a pair of glasses like this. I kept thinking that, but you know, maybe I'm you know, imagining that. But
Well,
like, it's a weird world, man.
it's entirely possible. I mean, I wear glasses now, you know. He also he is. It's really funny the way he's presented. This is an age-old thing, but like the script decides who's considered hot and who's not. But they're all Hollywood actors, so everybody's beautiful. You know, he just wears a sport coat and glasses to high school, and
Well,
so
and he's studious.
yes,
We know he's less
Right.
attractive because he cares about. He's the one that gives the speech on the town's history with witchcraft and
yes.
everything. So we know he has to be a real Poindexter because, you know, he cares about his classes.
But in the logic of, you know, every Scooby-Doo style or Josie and the Pussycats style cartoon, he still is part of the gang. He's still, like, for whatever
Right.
reason, hangs out with the very LeVar Burton and Peter DeLuise and their respective girlfriends. I get no, that's not quite right. But
Well,
anyway,
I can say that being the nerdlington back in the day, that this character is like, oh, I associate with him. Also, completely clueless. Like, Drew's like, oh, that's how could he possibly like not take the advances from this cheerleader girl? I don't know, man. I was completely clueless. So
it can be easy to miss.
I can see that.
Well,
Like,
he is also stupidly fixated on Dedee Pfeiffer. So
That's
you know,
true.
maybe
Yeah.
that's it.
yeah.
But
Who's dressed as a metal chick? So this character feels a lot closer to home to Tony than maybe
Right.
it should. You know,
I mean-
also why I'm so enamored with, you know, like, yeah, I get you, like fist bump to Mark Price in Trick or Treat, right? Like,
Right.
these are the characters that were like, yeah, this is the character meant for me because I totally understand and not being popular at the party. And then like, oh, there's the girl I like and she's dressed as metal girl, even though that's also ridiculous and not very metal. But, you know, other than
Yes.
literally she's wearing chains.
Well, and she's totally
but I could see
unfamiliar
like,
with
yeah,
it too.
and
That
that's
was hilarious.
cool. But I'm also a nice guy, and oh no, football player guy. Like I could feel all of this in a way that none of this happened exactly this way. But yeah.
His self monologue is funny. I mean, at that point, the movie's employing some writing that sounds more like a regular comedy. He's like self-talking
honestly,
and
once
stuff.
this guy gets to college, I think he'll be okay. Like he just didn't fit in this town. Like he hasn't found his proper tribe yet.
I guess it is funny because when he first meets the cheerleader girl while she's walking around, Sandy, by the way, she's called, and it's impossible not to think of Sandy from Grease, which was like a mega hit film just a couple of 6 years within the decade. But anyway, he sees her. He is kind of the Mac when he first sees her because she goes, "Oh yeah, I'm wandering around." And he goes, "Well, why don't you come to this party?" Smooth, good job. He sees the girl.
But, he
goes,
had just been
"Come to the
lectured
party."
by Dick Van Patten. How could he not?
That's true. Yeah, Dick. That's
that
point.
epic stud muffin, Dick Van.
I just want to mention that in that point where we check back in, the script has all the characters go, "Hey, let's all go home and get changed and then come back." So there's the conversation with Dick Van Patten, but there's also Peter DeLuise goes back home where Kevin McCarthy is his dad, and suddenly we veer into like deep melodrama.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah, it's like they're in like an after school special.
Yes,
for
exactly.
A few moments where they're talking about the abusive, hard drinking dad. Like,
yes,
I will say, even though he's playing a raging asshole, I like seeing Kevin McCarthy and anything because I associate him with Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
I do too, and he elevates everything. And I think this is probably around the time that he was on Moonlighting as well as Matty Hayes' dad, who was also a judge, if I recall. Like he was a powerful guy there, But he's so good. No, he's great. He's and he's awful. And never in a million years did I imagine what was going to happen with these guys, though. I mean, were you shocked with what happens, which is that Kevin McCarthy becomes a zombie, first of all, murdered, as you mentioned, by this serial killer who's risen from the grave. But then he kills Peter DeLuise. That is mind-blowing.
It's kind of dark.
It's super dark.
It's amazing. Also, like Kurtwood Smith's definitely an actor who, he's younger.
Yeah.
But there's a certain age aura that once he had reached a certain age in his life, he's just Kurtwood Smith. Like, you're happy to see him. He's always great, but he always his demeanor and everything, and it's awesome. Also, terrible cops because they don't even notice things like how, oh, that must have been dogs when the werewolf busts out. Like the glasses on the outside there, detective cop guy. Like that's an outward, that's some Encyclopedia Jones.
Yes.
All the glass came from, there's none of it inside. All of it came from outside. So something busted out. And they're like, oh, Halloween again.
Yeah.
It's just the worst.
This is about a year before he made
time
RoboCop.
of year.
Oh God! Yes.
Halloween, dumbass. I just kept expecting that to come out of his mouth.
It's funny, by the way, that he reads that line twice because he gets it in the opening. The opening, just to jog back there for a second, is amazing because you get this shot to the grass where the newspaper boy is prepping his,
which is apparently Macaulay Culkin, by the way.
Are you kidding? Really?
Wow.
Oh wow!
It looks all for the world to be wearing one of the silver shamrock masks.
Yeah, I like that he puts on his hat over the mask as well.
Well, what I think is funny is the sort of the creeping pace at that point. That the movie in that first couple minutes lets you know we're in no hurry. with with this film because we're just gonna hang out with the newspaper boy as he ties his shoes and puts his newspaper stuff together and then puts on a mask and takes off. It's not a laugh, right? It's not a joke. It's just an observation that I guess gives you the small town, and then he rides around the small town, just very similar to like in Creepshow and not Creepshow. Sorry,
Creepshow
Dark Side.
2.
Yeah, Creepshow 2.
Uh,
The
when
whole
was?
animated sequence is the Paperboy
Oh
sequence.
yes, that's right. That's right. Billy with the waiting for the. But I was thinking about the kid in Tales from the Dark Side who goes to see Debbie Harry, although I
Hmm.
can't remember if he was a newspaper boy or not. Anyway, it fits into this sort of motif that you saw a lot in the mid '80s of this sort of tow-headed kid wandering around and passing by or getting involved with danger. um yeah, when Kevin McCarthy, first of all, it was really cool to see Kevin McCarthy throw Peter DeLuise across a car. It's quick cutting. I'm sure that this is a stunt double for Peter DeLuise, but it's great. It's really cool. Yeah, but this is one of those things where like you're telling me that Disney put this on ABC primetime. Hey kids, gather round, and then you have this like the father turns into a zombie and kills his like I'm just saying if you were 8 I think that would be disturbing. I think it would be a
Yeah,
you
Oh,
would
I'm
never.
sure this movie scared plenty of kids.
Yeah, I
absolutely.
there's no way like for instance today in 2022 no way would you play this on the Disney Channel.
That's what I'm
Absolutely not.
saying. Like that's what's interesting to me is, the amount, like it's tame by a lot of other standards, but the idea of a lot of the stuff that you were talking about earlier about the violence, the guy gets mauled and then by a
Yeah.
werewolf and then his dogs are going to maybe eat him.
Yes.
So the werewolf comes back. All this stuff, he gets shot and then, he gets shot, he turns back into a human once he's shot, silver bullet, but he, takes a full shotgun,
Yes.
a rifle, and all this stuff is like kind of crazy to say, yeah, you know what, put it on, we're gonna do this, and it's
We're
gonna, and
good to
the
go.
the cheerleader, hey, we should go in the back seat.
Yes.
Not to say that there weren't adult things, and depending, it probably wasn't prime time, I don't think. It seems like it would be later, again, I have to look it up, and I'm probably tvguide.com or somebody has like what the
No, it
actual,
ran at 9 p.m. on
that's
Eastern. 9
yeah,
p.m.
that's
Eastern.
late. That's late enough, right?
Yeah, it's past the family hour.
Right.
It's but yeah.
But
So and
sponsors
8
are gonna have
p.m.
to,
Go ahead.
yeah, I mean, sponsors are gonna have to buy into it and everything.
Yeah. Yeah, but that leads you to believe that this is aimed more at, parents, older kids. Who watches Friday
Sure.
night TV? Like,
I mean, the soundtrack certainly was probably skewing
Yeah.
with
yeah.
like all the oldies and everything. Probably does skew a little bit more
With the
towards
exception of the
parents.
Smiths
Okay, let's
and a
talk
couple
about
of
the
others.
Smith
With
scene.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, everybody makes their way to this party at the Cavender Mansion, and Lucinda Cavender, the risen megalomaniac vampire, immediately starts making goo eyes at Shari Belafonte, her own descendant, and is like, "I want to turn you into a vampire so we can be like lesbianic ruler vampires together, and also get like all sexual with like everybody within like reach." So but her attack on Shari Belafonte, as I mentioned earlier, involves when the attack happens and she starts sucking Shari Belafonte's blood spurts and geysers from the bottles of wine in this cellar to the tune of How Soon Is Now by the Smiths, which is, by the way, one of my like favorite songs. I because I love the guitar in that, but it's like, do you agree with like, to me this was Argento like weird. I mean, it looked like something out of Suspiria, except for not
It's a
as
little
bloody.
more auteur
Mhm.
than you would expect from a TV
It's
movie. To be sure.
it's more auteur than the crazy costumes, like football guy who's in a diaper of some
Yeah.
sort, and
Yes.
just random, like the costumes are so weird and so random,
Yes.
and it's like what is going on here? It's it's more auteur than the Bigfoot / werewolf.
Right.
So yeah, I mean that's what or the little person
Right.
zombie who straight from in a very sticky way drinks from the punch bowl and then kind of
Yes.
has a moment on the stairs like, yeah, buddy, I
I'm
understand.
I'm
Not not
wondering.
popular with the chicks right here either. Yeah.
I'm kind of wondering if Jack Bender was like, you know what, this might be my only chance to make a vampire movie.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna go for it.
Oh, that's what makes it kind of wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, I've been reading Junk Film, this book by Catherine Coldiron, and she talks about how it's not out yet. It comes out next year, but she talks about how there are some movies that she defends because there's no way you can't like call them good. They don't follow the rules of what they're not coherent enough to make a good film. She goes, but you don't have a film doesn't have to follow all the rules or be what we might call good to be something that you love. And I'm just loving how bizarre this film is, and I mean, to the point, by the way, I disagree slightly with the theory of that Catherine, because sometimes I'll go, well, isn't that a form of good? But she's sort of working in an argument where she's saying like, no, it's safe to call a film bad, like Showgirls. She thinks Showgirls is bad. It's safe to call Showgirls bad and also say I love watching Showgirls. Is this a bad film? I don't know. It's certainly weird, and this sexy vampire stuff is like, I'm here for this. I especially
Well,
the house suit is now a thing.
the thing is like the exploding red fluids, which I guess is wine, but like,
Yeah.
you say Argento, I think of the Coppola Dracula movie when I'm watching this, and this is like almost a decade earlier than
Yeah.
that, which is crazy.
Yeah. What makes
and
it
a
what
TV movie.
what are you thinking of when you say that? Like, draw that picture for me.
There's the point where Dracula kills Lucy, and for some reason blood explodes like
yes.
everywhere.
Yes.
And it doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense, but it's visually it's got some, it's a nice visual touch.
Yes.
This man, like I just like the fact that somebody was going there in the TV movie. So I can get with what you're saying, Jason. I think that there's something charming about that.
Yes.
So, by the way, and I don't, depending on how old you are, you probably just won't get it. But has there ever been a DJ other than Wolfman Jack who has just been in so much media?
I don't know.
Wolfman Jack was in just so many things.
He may have been the most recognizable DJ of all time. I mean, who else are you going to talk about? Rick Steves?
Kasem, I guess.
Yeah, Casey Kasem, I guess, would be probably transcends it because Casey Kasem, that was for years, like all over.
Well, Wolfman Jack was, but they were kind of contemporaries. And it's possible we don't live in the era of radio taking over, culture that way. But then, yeah, I mean, but to your point, everybody knew Wolfman Jack. Absolutely.
There were DJs that you'll see in like older, black and white horror movies where obviously like, DJ shows up at like a school dance or you get the impression, or there's all the high school movies that then, have shown up recently on like riff tracks and stuff like that. So you'll get these personalities who show up in film. But I gotta say, during this time period, you heard Wolfman Jack and he was just all over everything, like just so much stuff that it's really impressive. And just like, and that was a bit of nostalgia for me as well, just because that was so much the voice. And it was weird too because it wasn't like it was Wolfman Jack's America's Top 40.
No,
you didn't hear him every week like that, but he became such a media personality.
Yes.
As I mean, utterly recognizable voice if you know who Wolfman Jack is. But regardless, if you just hear it, even if you're not as old and you hear it, like you go, oh, I see why that person's
yes
here. But I just started thinking about that, like, wow, what how many things his voice turned up in and during that time period.
It's a remarkable voice. I mean, and yeah, he did everything. Like at this period in the 80s, he was a radio DJ, he was hosting syndicated video. He was a video DJ, right? On
Sure.
he just had all kinds of stuff. Yeah, that's amazing. And so in this town, they clearly are listening to some superstation that is broadcasting Wolfman Jack, probably to a number of communities, because he sure as heck doesn't live in this tiny, very small town. I also wanted to mention that one of the subplots is that LeVar Burton. So we've been made to understand that LeVar Burton is like a football hero with Peter DeLuise, and yet he has not managed. And I guess these guys are seniors, but he has not yet had sex with his girlfriend Shari Belafonte. This is a major sore point with him, and so he is trying to work her to. He thinks tonight's the night. Now, number one, I have never seen anybody discuss having sex with their girlfriend potentially more than this guy discusses it with like everybody who will listen in this movie. It is so weird. I mean, I just
Yeah.
I've never they discuss it like they're salespeople, at in like a sales team where they're like, I think I can get across the line with Shari Belafonte. I just it's like that doesn't reflect a reality that I'm aware of, but I'm sure that people pressure their girlfriends to have sex. What you don't do is announce it to everybody around. So anyway, he's incredibly horny, and so when Shari Belafonte vampire shows up, she's totally sexual with him, and so he's like, "Oh, tonight's the night," and then he becomes a vampire. By the way, they have instant vampires in this movie, so that you just like in
Right.
in
Well, you got to
Legend of
get it done before midnight. So.
Yes, everything. Vampirism is a zap, and you become one. You get bitten, you get it, you become a vampire, and you become evil. And I'm not even gonna bother creating a no prize for why you can also suddenly take part in the group dance.
That dance scene.
By the way, Wolfman Jack also had a short run animated series, Wolf Rock TV.
Oh my goodness!
Which
I
re-aired later, but
I remember him showing up as a villain on the Swamp Thing TV show too.
Yeah, absolutely.
No kidding. Wow. Well, I saw Wolfman TV or whatever it was called. I mean, yes, I saw that with the animated interstitials, and then they would play, like Lindsey Buckingham or whoever had a video that week. Wow.
Well, it was 84, and then it resurfaced along with Kid Video, which you might have. I think I remember it more from the Kid Video 89 era. But yeah,
I don't know that at all.
It's just so bizarre. What a time! What a time to be alive.
Right. I would. By the way, in this era, I would not have been. I wasn't listening to the Smiths myself. So if I had watched this film in 1984, that song would have gone completely.
Oh, absolutely.
Because it was way too alternative. But boy, is it cool! I mean, I just can't get over how awesome the song is, and it's the only needle drop that breaks the rhythm of 50s oldies through the whole thing. The other example, by the way, is a 1981 recording of Sea of Love. So there's that as well. But other than that, those are the only two needle drops.
That's also they're making a point because Sandy character is like, when did this come out? Like they're trying to show that she's a little weird.
That's true. Different. Oh, I don't know if it actually plays for her to constantly be not hinting, but trying not to reveal that she's a revivified dead teenager, but she's constantly saying stuff that indicates that she is. And then they could have gone other. I don't know what else that they were going to do, but the thing is, it doesn't quite work because the stuff she says is so bizarre that he's got to think there's something super weird about her. But I don't know. I don't
know. She's hot and he's,
he's dorky and
I
mean, I don't even know if it's smoothness on his part to go, hey, there's a party. He's just kind of hoping, and he's like, well, maybe I'll see you at the party because that's where everybody's gonna be.
Yes, yeah, that's a good point. He also has an active fantasy life. There's this. It is funny because I can see him up on the screen right now, and he is something like a 22-year-old tall, hunky, excellent-haired, bespectacled nerd. That's the you know it is
Right.
there's really nothing like there's nothing unapproachable about his character. But anyway, when she pretends to do the pom poms with some scraps of newspaper in his vision, they become real pom poms. When he first sees her, he envisions this whole smoky Casablanca-esque thing of approaching her, you know, from
And
behind.
his bizarre Dracula, but with glitter. I don't know what
That
that
whole
costume
costume
was.
is like also really good makeup job there, buddy.
Yeah,
Like
he's got a career going, and
the
this he wants it.
the
Yes,
design is great, even if he chose a itchy. I don't know why they make it. That's a weird choice too. There's so many just kind of strange choices. Like the amount of time that he's just scratching at this itchy wig,
right.
and whether that was just like, yeah, it is really itchy, and I just did that because I was hoping
It's
that
not a
eventually
gag
they'd
that's
let me.
meant to be funny, right? You don't
Yeah,
laugh, you
but
know,
it's just a whole. There's so much business with like, boy, is this wig itchy for
and it doesn't pay
who.
off. Other than he
who
takes off the makeup. But if you
yeah,
wanted him to take off the makeup so that he could have a nice date with the cheerleader, why bother having him have it at all? You know,
yeah, all of it just
why
such a
does LeVar
weird.
Burton put on a terrible costume and then take it back off again because everybody doesn't like it?
Oh man, well the part the part I felt justified when his girlfriend goes, "Oh, you smell bad." I was like, "Why did you put an egg on? My man?"
like what
Like
are you what
what?
in your head was that egg supposed to what I guess I don't know. I guess he's hoping to create a kind of viscous material
Right.
on
But
his mummy costume.
an
I
egg
know.
is gonna get so it's hard enough to wear if anybody's worn, especially oh boy, cheap Halloween makeup
Mm,
for any length of time, where it eventually starts to crack and just gets itchy.
yes,
Which is you learn as a kid because you get cheap makeup because that's what the local whatever
that's what you get at the
TGNY or
Piggly
whatever the
Wiggly.
hell
Yeah,
has, yeah,
sure.
like yeah, has, and then eventually you go, oh, this is terrible, right? I don't want to do this again. But an egg is gonna get so grotesque
Yes.
so quickly. Like watching him do that. The ketchup is gonna get gnarly quick, but you kind of go, well, ketchup, I guess it's blood. You've seen it. Like you could see somebody doing that, but the egg thing just made me cringe, just going, oh, that's gonna get
Well,
so
especially
gross,
since they
man.
make a point to point out that he smells later.
Exactly. That's the part where I was like, yes, finally somebody
I think I'm going to try a theory. I think what's going on movie wise is for both of these characters, Bender wants to get the actors looking good for their romantic stuff, and
sure.
so it's Halloween movie, so you want to show them in costume, and then plot wise, you want to get them back out of costume. So LeVar
Well,
Burton goes, "Oh, I'm going to go change," and he like in a moment, he's back to just hunky high schooler LeVar Burton,
right.
and I think that's what it is. I think it's just like we want to check box that they were wearing costumes and now they're not wearing costumes.
Sure.
Because Lee Montgomery removes his makeup. He says, "Wig's coming off. I'm taking off the makeup." Those two things to get to what he looks like apparently a few minutes later, that is not an easy task because his hair is perfect. And it does not look like he has had it pinned up and under a wig all evening. And likewise, I don't know how he got all that grease paint off. I really because it's pretty amazing. Anyway,
Also considering like when he's sitting there, she goes, "Oh, you have quite the rash there, buddy." From this,
oh yes,
like,
yes. Maybe that was like an improvised LeVar Burton line because that doesn't pay off. So who knows?
all of that is just like, okay, sure,
um, but, I and then the story splits off where the guy goes out, runs into the cheerleader. Lee Montgomery goes and runs into the cheerleader girl. Meanwhile, back at the party starts going wild. But I'm trying to remember if you're listening to this and for some reason you haven't seen this movie, which I have to say is inconceivable to me, but um, if you have to at least you should search YouTube for the vampirism scene in the cellar, but I don't know if that's possible. But definitely, I guess what everybody always links to is "Get Dead," the song by Shari Belafonte, because they do dance it on the staircase, and it's I think this is something that would only happen in the '80s, only. So yes.
You say that, but in Hocus Pocus, they also stopped the movie
Oh my gosh,
for
you're
a
right.
musical number.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I can't believe I forgot that. Wow. So there are similarities between this and Hocus Pocus.
Yeah.
I mean, I Tony, I
Yeah,
think you were observing that, right?
if you like to guess Hocus Pocus or Hocus Pocus 2, this also, if you want to get your 80s on with something similar, here it is.
There's a lot of similarities. Yes. The difference is the difference is Hocus Pocus aimed at a younger crowd, and Hocus Pocus focuses on the people who've been revived, whereas this focuses on this crazy, Scooby Gang, and one person that's been revived. I love that Sandy, the cheerleader, is a vanishing hitchhiker. How cool is that? Like that you can kind of imagine how, assuming Bender wrote the script, I don't really know who wrote it, but you can imagine that whoever put it together starts out going, "What are some
No,
motifs we could play
it
with?"
was different writer.
Oh, very good. It's William Blake. I found it. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we can imagine that he started out. Oh, he wrote the Hearse. I love the Hearse, and he was a writer for Poltergeist Legacy. So he's like a straight up regular horror guy. The Hearse is a very, very cool, spooky woman returns to a small town because she inherited an old house, and there are weird secrets at play, and blah blah blah. Anyway, he's probably like, well, if there's this 50s motif going on, let's have a a poodle skirt wearing a cheerleader who, died. They don't ever say, I don't think they say how she died, but she's, looking to get
Well,
home.
that's
the
where
yeah.
this becomes oddly sanitized. Is that like anytime something would get too gruesome,
Yeah.
they have to pull back just a little bit. And so,
Yeah,
you never learn why she dies because that might be too depressing.
I
Yeah, I
was
guess that's right.
curious if it was in a drag race because
Yeah.
she encourages him. Like that whole scene seems like they're kind of going that way.
Yes.
And it doesn't really go that way. But I was, there's parts of her character that are, very interesting. She plays the two sides of Sandra Dee pretty well.
Yeah.
There's the like, oh hey, I'm a cheerleader, and the let's drag race, let's get in the back seat.
Yes.
Which
I think she's the
cool.
most interesting character in this movie.
I want more of this character.
I do sort of have questions about the monster rules at the very end
right.
because like when they reversed the spell that caused all this, all the monsters just vanished. So my question is,
tell me what you think that means, because continue. Go ahead.
So follow the rules of kitty horror, which is this is nominally is that.
Okay.
That means that all those people that were dead are all, like it's just all been reversed, like it never happened. So everybody,
that's the impression I get.
Yeah, everybody's back to normal. But we never see that. Like the movie just kind of ends.
Yeah.
So you don't know for sure. If this was just a little bit longer, I keep imagining that this movie has like a slightly different ending because like I keep imagining that like he goes to school the next day and like Sandy shows up, but she's contemporary now, and because
I like that, Drew. That's
a lot of
neat.
80s movies would go there, but like it, apparently it didn't happen because like every time I watch that movie, it's like, oh, I guess that's just in my head. But like
there's that, by the way, that moment right before they're able to reverse the spell. This is a good action movie ending. That by the time you get to the ending, they're running around. They've got to do the thing with the scroll and melt some wax and use a ring and all this stuff they have to do. There's a lot of running back and forth, and they are being closed in on. Finally, they are just hunkered down in this car of his while the zombies close in, and it's really scary. I mean, it's really, you're like, I don't know if our ragtag band is going to make it because everybody else is already dead in this movie. And now everybody's trying to get to them, and then you're right, it's like whoosh, and it's gone. By the way, it's Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, go ahead. Finish your thought.
It's a 1953 Cadillac convertible they're in. That's why she thinks the car's cool, and why it's not bonkers to her. He's not driving a Trans Am or anything. He's driving a car that she would recognize. Just randomly, he just has a 53 Cadillac.
Right.
Anyway, continue.
In a different, maybe European horror movie, it would have ended with the scene where all of the ghouls end up on the banister, like up and down the stairway.
Yes.
And that would have been more or less the end. Maybe they would descend, and then that would be it.
Yeah,
that's legitimately creepy. By the way, like we're
Sure.
like the entire party full of monsters are like, we've been waiting for you.
Boy, that
Like,
is weird. Yes, yeah, that's true. I mean, you're right. You could have.
That would have been the end of an anthology, like.
Yes.
Some kind of Ghost Train anthology, or Monster Club or something like that would have.
Yeah, because
that would have been the shot, and then they would have all started to move towards them, and then you cut, and then like, oh, that was scary.
Yeah, no, you're right. Or you cut to the next day,
Yeah.
and you'd cut to the next day, and it'd be like Invasion of the Body Snatchers, where in fact everybody's dead.
Right.
Yeah, and you're right that it's like it also reminds me of Zombie, where basically afterwards the zombies are just wandering.
Sure.
Yeah, so it could have gone the other way, but instead they get this. They appear to have reversed the spell. There's zero explanation afterwards. There's no recap. He doesn't go back to school and chat with Peter DeLuise and go, "Sure, glad you're not dead, Peter DeLuise." I would love to hear more about that. I would love to have at least a single scene. But no, we're denied it, which I guess is fine. Man, Shari Belafonte is right. There should be a sequel to this movie. That's a great idea. Peter DeLuise is a TV director now, so he could always do it.
Is he related to Dom DeLuise?
Yeah, it's his son.
That's nuts.
One of several sons.
That it looks nothing like his dad.
No, I mean, yeah, they look very different. And I don't know how many DeLuise kids there are, but Peter DeLuise was in 21 Jump Street, but now I think of Peter DeLuise as a regular name on When Calls the Heart, which is a sort of, it's like Little House on the Prairie. It's sort of a Little House on the Prairie soap opera kind of show, but he's like one of the main directors of that. So he's transitioned over into that life. Wow. I'm sure that we've discussed I'm sure there are other things, but I've forgotten. Oh, I do want to mention that Peter DeLuise drives a Chevy Chevelle, which is gorgeous. It's a 1971 Chevy Chevelle, and it is a tank. I mean, it's an enormous car that is perfect if you're going to be carrying 5 people around, to go do whatever it is that you do in a small town like this. It is completely believable that this would be the hand-me-down car that the judge gave this guy in 1984.
Oh, you can haul more than 5 people. I had a Ford Fairlane that wasn't nearly as boat-like as that, and that will hold a lot of people.
I had a 1972 gold Galaxy 500, which was, I mean, when you drove it down the freeway, air would start going under it, and it would just sail. It would quake,
Right. No, I'm with you. Yeah, I have a good long story I should tell you sometime. My first and last time of being the designated driver for 7 or 8 people in that Ford Fairlane, and by the end of that night, I said, "You can all just find your own way home next time, and if any of you burn up, that's," which sounds horrible to say, but if I tell you the story, you'll understand.
I can't wait. We should start a Patreon just so people can subscribe to have you tell that story. I would love to see that Ford Fairlane too.
By the way, that thing, man, it's one of those cars where you get, like, my stepdad's like, "Oh, we'll get it," and it came from a junkyard. In many ways, look, I had good times, and some not so great times, but it should have probably stayed in the junkyard. The final time I drove it, like, the steering seized up, and then I parked it. And that was when I went to college, and it never, as far as I know, that thing never drove again.
That's
Number of
really
times I also had to replace the starter. I don't want this to be this discussion, but that car. But the car you're describing will hold a lot more people, because I know for a fact how many people could fit in a smaller yet boat-like car.
Yes, these the Chevelle and the Galaxy are just enormous cars. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just hard to wrap your head around how big they were making these darn cars.
Oh
Anyway,
man,
that's a lot of metal.
my grandfather had a Lincoln Continental, which was the go into mass Saturday night or going to church car, and that was a boat. I mean, that thing was just it felt, when they say land yacht, like, I mean, you're right, like once you get going, like you're just kind of sailing along hugely, like those cars, man. By the way, I think something we didn't mention, which I love, when the whole town is just basically overrun with monsters,
Yes.
there are so many cool bits there that would be cool no matter what movie they were in. Like the mailman
Tell
who's
us
just
about it.
throwing
Yeah.
mail into a burning car,
Yeah.
and just all kinds of just crazy monster mayhem that's going on in the town. It's like that stuff was truly cool. Like
It's
so many
nightmarish.
bits.
It's beautiful. It reminds me of do you read Sutter Kane? You know, like where they have to, like, oh yeah, because they have to, there's tension that Bender builds into the story where he's like, drive slowly so they don't, like, notice us. And they
Right.
just move through this apocalyptic monster
It's
vision.
pretty beautiful. I mean, yeah, the costumes are of the budget for that they have, but just there's so many just creepy, weird bits and just tons
Yes.
of mayhem.
There's
That
an
it's pretty
opera
impressive.
singer
Yeah. Oh,
in the
man.
gazebo. He's singing for no reason. He's just one of the ghouls. It's fabulous. You're right. Thank you for bringing that up, because
That
this,
scene is really, like, again, I don't know why the, like, mailman just throwing mail into a burning
well, it's
car. It's just
disturbing. That's the thing.
all of it's just like, whoa, what? Wow, man. When this went off the rails, it did so gloriously.
There are all the military dead have risen and are
Oh yeah,
marching.
yeah, yeah.
There's you ever think, like, same thing with the cellar scene, like if you just took that scene and cut it out and like played it in a clip show, I think people would sit up and look at it and go, what the heck is this from?
Oh, this would be a great Draft House bumper.
Yeah, I
Like
mean,
both of those things. Just, if you had a made for TV movie marathon,
yes,
you just play those. I mean, you probably play this movie, but either way, Halloween. Those are some good Halloween bits. No matter
yes,
how you think it's all put together, the effective scenes in this movie are really effective.
yes,
It's kind of, I don't know if saying it's a shame doesn't really do it justice, but tonally it's all over the map, because you've
yeah,
also got the kind of Earth Angel thing, you got like several different movies. It almost does feel like we talked about earlier, like it could have been an anthology as well. Could easily have been in segments, the vampire return segment, the party segment, all of this could have been, the revenge, this could have been a creep show with the zombie revenge on the judge who's
yes,
terrible.
yeah.
All these things. It almost is an anthology with a just kind of put together with the narrative. It just bucks the anthology.
Oh, I get it.
Kind of framing.
Like if it's a frame story, if
Yeah,
the
it's
frame
not
story is these teenagers raise the dead, and now each of these stories, you're
right.
right that this movie makes at least more sense than any of the frame stories in any Amicus
Well, I
anthology.
don't know about that, but I mean, it could have been that, but the parts that work are actually, like, I got to give it up for everybody involved. Like, it's creepy and scary where it needs to be,
Yeah.
and that's not always the case with a lower budget movie,
Oh, I
especially for
agree.
TV. Like we've seen a bunch of stuff, and I think if you're making something, it's hard enough to make something, but if you can make something where you get like several different, just whoa, where did this come from reactions?
Yeah.
I mean, that's it's not the curse of what we talk about, where it's like, well, it's better to do that than just be bland
Yes.
and unmemorable. Like,
I agree.
there's some really great memorable bits in this.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, if you took just like if you took the roller skate from Fright Night 2 and just played that scene by itself, I think somebody would watch it and go, honestly, what the hell is this? Like
Right.
and same thing here with this like hell on earth apocalypse that Bender is giving us at the end. Yeah, I would love to just play that scene for somebody and go, hey gang, everybody I just showed that scene to, what do you think this movie is? Like, what do you think from what you've seen here? It is really cool. I'm glad that he got this darn thing on TV,
Mhm.
like, because it feels, because I don't know how this works, right? But it feels like he's stretching as much as he can to get onto to get different crazy things, including all the weird violence, including all the horniness, including whatever music he's into. I'm going to presume that Bender is a big 50s fan. Who knows? But it's cool what he's been able to do. And by the way, that counts as my final thought because if I loop back around and say let's do final thoughts, I would have said exactly the same thing. But Tony, did you have anything else that I should ask final thought wise?
No, I enjoyed it. It's not, it's not a perfect movie. I don't know if I would have actively sought it out. Because I didn't remember it exactly. I think you and I, or maybe you just put out like, hey, I'm looking for this thing. Or I came across this thing, and there's a lot of
I tweet about it
what
about
I
twice
think
a year.
yeah, what I think about, I think there's a lot of Jasonness in it.
Yeah.
And so
The 50s
I was like,
obsession is probably, yeah, that's true.
well, just the fashion, the time period, I get it,
Yeah.
and I think it was cool to cover it. And again, like seeing when you catch evocative bits in something. Although I will say, look, if you're gonna archive something, if you're a person who's decided like this is a thing that needs more eyes on it, and you're gonna archive it, please, for the love of all that is cinematically holy, put it in the right damn aspect ratio.
Yeah.
Like, it was made for TV. It's in 4:3. Don't make everybody look like they're the Storm from like who expands himself in Big Trouble in Little China.
Storm King,
Like,
yes.
everybody should not look like that. I mean, it did make all the cars look even more boat-like.
Yes,
but
that's true.
Just if you decided to archive this the correct way, and I know I make videos. I know how it possibly had worked, and it's a pain to mat things correctly and do, like, I get it. But if you're gonna do it, can I ask, please do it right? I know it's probably such a terrible nitpick, and people are like, dude, come on, let it go. But if the idea is preservation, that's one of the things that just sets me in like this. And I'll watch it anyway. I'm definitely not one of those like, I can't even watch this like this. I'm not a purist, but when I notice these things, it does make me a little bit crazy. Like, just like it makes my teeth grind a little bit.
Sure.
Because you've gone through all this trouble to resurrect something that's cool. Like, it's okay. We're okay with black bars on the sides, I think.
I am too, and I wonder about that because I mean,
but maybe
a
lot of people aren't. Maybe, I don't know, man. That's just my sorry.
Well, what do you do?
That.
If you're on Disney Channel and you watch like an old television show on the Disney Channel? What do? Do you get black bars on the side?
I'm pretty sure most.
I'm just wondering how the OTT services are handling this right now. But
well, I didn't notice. Like, if I watch the Muppets, I don't notice it as stretched. I don't notice the Muppets being stretched now that I think about it.
Yeah, so they must be doing a letterboxing of some kind.
I have to go back and see now that you mention it. I guess I just my thing is I'm so used to switching back between like VHS formats or like a 4:3 presentation on a DVD. Like, it's 4:3 and I'm fine with it. So I think for me, I only notice it when it's wrong or bad. And so I haven't thought about like, oh, how does this channel handle that? I think a lot of channels just put, just mask it on the side the way you do.
Yeah. By the way, the movie is available overseas on DVD, just not here, which that tells me even more that this is probably related. It's probably related to the music. Yeah,
sure. Which is probably also why Trick or Treat. Like, I think there's something with Fastway on that, which bums me out. One day, I hope to have a UHD of Trick or Treat '87, but who knows?
So it's interesting. You can get like a Spanish DVD that has an English track, but it's obviously it's the wrong region, right? So it won't
easily fixable with some cash.
Yeah. Actually, I may be wrong. It doesn't say. It says import NTSC. I'm looking on at Amazon. So whatever. Anyway, we'll figure this out. If I can get a copy of this on DVD, I will totally go for it. Drew, what do you think about final thoughts?
Like I said, I don't think that there's anything to be really gained about looking at this through a typically critical eye. I just think that this is a fun movie you can watch. It can get you in the Halloween spirit.
I love that you say that.
Full of time
That's cool.
capsule of the 1980s too.
Yeah.
Like it very much, you know, a mid 80s vibe. And so like if you're of a certain age, that's gonna give you a lot of nostalgia. I had a good time watching it, you know, like I don't know, that's really all I got.
That's perfect. I just want to say again, thank you guys for watching this. I kind of wish that Julia had seen it because I think that she might enjoy it.
I think you should still say, hey, look, I mean, far be it from me. Who knows about your time, but I think she would still have fun watching it.
I think she might enjoy it. It'd be funny. Funny's the wrong word. It'd be cool to do a Lee Montgomery double feature because, again, with him being the girls just want to have fun dancer and also the romantic lead in this, that'd be neat.
We just watched that recently again because it's one of Rain's favorite movies. So on her birthday, we watched Girls Just Want to Have Fun.
It's good, no? I mean, I like that. I like that movie a lot. You know,
it does everything it's supposed to do gleefully, and that's great.
It's fabulous, and I always thought that "Dancing in Heaven," the song that they use for
the
dance off at the end, that is honestly, "Dancing in Heaven" is a terrible song, and yet it's very memorable, and so you can't get it out of your head. But so yeah, I love it. And that's the other thing. If somebody came to you with this movie we just watched, Midnight Hour, because I was thinking about it with Girls Just Want to Have Fun. They said, okay, we're going to release Midnight Hour on Blu-ray, but just so you know, we've replaced all the songs with library tracks of, you know, random pop, you know, so that you don't have any of the 50s songs. Would you watch it? Like, would it even would you watch the vampire scene if they replaced How Soon Is Now with some not even a cover of How Soon Is Now? They usually will grab some pop song that is, you know, it's just a licensed library title and it has like
a similar vibe.
I
mean, I think that if you remembered it, it would seem lesser. I think if you didn't remember it, it wouldn't be.
Oh, well said. Yeah.
I think it wouldn't be as big a deal, but I think if you saw the scene, you'd go, "Oh, well, that's a downgrade."
Yes.
By the way, the biggest one I've ever seen of that is
Are you gonna say Dracula?
No, there's the premiere of Eponamathon and what's it? Kick-Ass. So the original, there's a scene where hit girls like fighting.
Yeah.
And in the cut that we saw originally, November Rain was playing, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
And it absolutely ripped. And I guess they couldn't get the right. So by the time there's a song that has a vibe that's similar in that scene in Kick-Ass.
Yeah.
But boy, when that hit, that's one of those moments where you're like, yeah. And, you know, there's probably several hundred people in the whole world who saw that cut.
Right.
I'm sure that it went to several places and there were screener audiences, right? But of the number of people who have seen Kick-Ass, there's several hundred people, a smaller demographic, who saw it with that cut.
So there's no sense of loss. They don't know what they're missing.
Sure.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But I mean, boy, did it rip.
I'm sure. I'm sure.
It's just like every bit, because they cut it to that, you know, like when you know, it's something. But I think if you didn't know, it still really works, right? So I think that would be the kind of how this would work. Like, if you didn't know that all those things were there, it probably wouldn't make a difference. In the same way, you know, I just got the UHD of Return of the Living Dead.
Okay. All right.
If you don't know how the Tar Man sounds, or the Send More Cops guy, or you don't know that you're missing the Damned,
right?
Maybe it's not as big a deal, but when you grew up with it and you know how much better it is with all the music cues and with the voices the correct way, which, by the way, you still have to watch the 2.0, the stereo versions, the only one, even now, with all the original
That's so
cuts.
strange.
Like, they didn't remaster the 5.1. They didn't take the original, you know, with all the voices, all the, you know, all the music cues, everything, and remaster that in 5.1. And there's multiple reasons. I'm not knocking them for not doing it. But throughout, since the VHS era, which was, you know, stereo, was it 5.1 VHS? As far as I know, I don't think that's, you know, I don't think you can get anything. So, you know, if you wanted the original up until recently, you couldn't even get that past the VHS. So, but the UHD is cool, but you still do have to listen to the 2.0 mix, which is fine. I mean, that's how I always viewed it. But again, if you don't know that, you may not. It's only when you've seen it and can appreciate the loss of a soundtrack that makes a difference.
Some movies you literally could not. I mean, for instance, I feel like American Graffiti, it would be a mistake to go ahead and release it if you couldn't relicense.
Oh, tons of stuff. I mean, there's tons of stuff like that. But if somebody chooses to do that, it's often a change where you're like, oh, that was a cool scene. And then if you see the scene with the actual original soundtrack, because it's being cut to that and everything, you're going, whoa, that was so much more effective.
Well, my go-to example is Dracula dancing with Susan St. James in I'm sorry, Love at First Bite, and it was I Love the Nightlife, and that's a great disco tune. It's a disco tune like literally everybody knows. And for the longest time, the DVD release had just a regular sort of random generic disco track thrown in, and that wasn't as good, it just abundantly was not as good. But that's how it goes. Anyway, did we talk endorsements? We haven't done endorsements yet, right? Okay, then let's do it. All right. So Tony, what do you have for us?
I've been watching a lot of stuff. I'm still watching stuff on Criterion. I mean, there's so many great 80s movies, and then the Ishiro Honda. I wish everybody here had Criterion and we were covering some of these Ishiro Honda movies on this podcast, because they remaster them. They look amazing. But last night I got the 4K version of The Shining UHD.
Oh, really? Wow.
It is so crisp. Like things I didn't even notice, like Shelley Duvall's wardrobe that is all these primary colors, and her boots always match her whatever outfit she had. Like all these choices that I noticed, and I noticed them subconsciously, and for some reason watching it this time, everything being so crisp.
Suddenly you're looking at all these things again, right?
Watching it on a projector is just like, whoa, that was amazing. And then something else, and I don't want to belabor this too much, but I did have a thought over this past week. I recently got from Vinegar Syndrome 2 movies that were originally, I had seen them many times on Mystery Science Theater. The Sword and the Dragon, which is Ilya Muramet's was the original, and The Day the Earth Froze, which was originally Sampo. Right. And it really made me think, like, these are nice releases. And it made me think a lot about what we view as B movies and their original intent. Because the print of Sampo that's on here, I've watched I've laughed a million times at The Day the Earth Froze. It's one of my favorite episodes.
Absolutely.
But seeing that kind of washed out dub version of it, which was not the intent of the filmmakers, right? When they made it, and having that be what was riffed on, and seeing it with subtitled and just a really nice print of these movies. And I bought them because I felt like this is cool that they're releasing these. I want to see these as they originally shown, and also I've watched them a million times on Mystery Science Theater, and I feel like I've enjoyed these movies. I want to support the people who are releasing these things in their original format, because I don't think we give enough movies the chance. And I was really like, it made me think a lot about, well, seeing it this way, would I have laughed? Is it as absurd? Is it, the presentation of, hey, this is a B movie can take on so many different forms. And,
well, remember also
seeing
go ahead. Well, I was just going to say, Catherine Coldiron in her book is talking about how MST3K, that they do good movies from time to time. I mean, I don't know if that one quite counts, but like this Island Earth is really, they do actually, just because it's on that show doesn't necessarily.
But that was for the movie.
Yeah.
But that was for the movie in general.
Yeah, good point. That's a good point.
Like I have a hard, like, I don't know if Monster A Go-Go would still make my top movies if I saw it. But also, I've seen a really, really, really good print of King Kong, original, that was so different from growing up watching it on, kind of monster movie Saturdays, where, it was a TV print. It was formatted for TV. It was kind of washed out.
Yeah.
And the difference between seeing that and a pristine, almost wet off the, negatives coming it was just so different and so
I'll bet it is. I'll bet.
everything. Like, in fact, those prints, like some of these prints, you might see them better than there are a bunch of theaters where you probably would have seen a not so great version of these movies, right? Like, in some ways, Blu-ray, even though it's not 4K, on a decent new projector may look like better than some theaters that you might have seen it in. But it was really cool to see these movies that Vinegar Syndrome had a sale, and I was like, oh, I'm gonna get this, these movies. I've seen a bunch, and it's really cool to see these movies I saw as riffs, like in nice subtitled formats. And I would love to see more kind of unsung films get this treatment, and I'm glad there's companies that are doing this. As a cinephile, and Deaf Crocodile, by the way, is the original. Vinegar Syndrome did the sale, and Deaf Crocodile sells through Vinegar Syndrome. But it was, I don't know. Again, I started to go off a little bit, but I did have one of those moments this week where I really kind of was thinking about, the nature of seeing something as a B movie. Oh, and before I forget, we did last year, we did an interview for the podcast, or when I was at Fantastic Fest, for Ike Boys. Which was really fun, and it's on VOD and available all over everywhere. And the filmmakers are just great people, really nice. The actors, like everybody involved with that film. I think it's just a fun, like, feel good film. Everybody from musicians on the soundtrack. Eric did, was the filmmaker. Like everybody involved with that was great. And I forgot about it last week. I couldn't believe it once I left, but Ike Boys, IKE, just a love letter to all the kind of kaiju anime stuff that I love, set in a small town, Oklahoma. So if you're out there, out and about, and you're looking for something heartwarming and cool and monster related, anime kaiju related, please give Ike Boys a shot, because now it's available all over the internet, legitimately, where you can give money to the filmmakers for their next films. So
wonderful.
Again, sorry I went a little long, but that's the kind of things that were on my mind.
No, that's good. That's good. Monsieur Drew, what do you got for us?
Tomorrow there is going to be a new Halloween Man on Halloween Man comic on Global Comics.
Awesome.
Which is my new publisher, a new digital platform. Last week we were putting the finishing touches on it. I'm not gonna lie, I got a little emotional.
Really?
Because I was at the point where I was starting to think that I was never going to find a new home. I was never going to be able to finish the story, and it was really eating me up. And so knowing that this is coming out, and that people can read it, and that it's going to be completed, it really means a lot to me. So please, if you listen to this podcast this week, go to Global Comics. That's Comics with an X. Look up Halloween. And there's tons of stuff on there to read, but please do read the newest issue. Everyone who worked on it worked really damn hard on it. It's a Mr. Hyde story, so that's kind of cool. Like always, like going back to the different classic monster, and I think that's also extra appropriate to Halloween. And of course, give us a like and a follow too, because we want. I want to be the number one comic on this website this week. Like So that's all I got. That's all I'm gonna say.
No, that's fabulous. That's really fabulous. I don't have anything to. The only thing that I watched that I had not seen before this week was Ride the Wild Surf. But this is not the podcast for me to promote random surf movies that I'm discovering. So I will just leave it there.
I don't know about that, but
okay. Ride the Wild Surf was fantastic. I'd never seen it before. It's one of the best surf movies I've ever seen. That's and it has a young Shelley Fabares and Barbara Eden and Fabian and Tab Hunter, who people will remember as the hot teacher in Grease 2. So it has a heck of a cast, and but great surfing, and it was actually shot in Hawaii, which is very unusual for a surf movie of 1964. So there, that's my endorsement.
So in the way that the 70s, late 70s, especially in 80s, had, where I guess they got endorsement deals or whatever, and they would have a Sanford Son or Brady Bunch Hawaiian episode. Can we figure out a way
Yes.
to get to have a podcast? Can we figure out a way to have a a Hawaii episode of this podcast so we can
That's
all
a great idea.
go to
Yeah.
Hawaii?
The Castle of Horror goes to Hawaii. That sounds
Like,
like a straight to paperback
thorough.
story about us, as opposed.
Yeah. Don't pick up any idols or rocks or
That
whatever.
that
Right?
does sound like a delightful fanfic about the Castle of Horror podcast. That
I mean,
that
I don't know if there's any conventions who want to have this or anything, but when you mentioned that, I was like, what a great, when you're old enough and you realize like how that all works. Like,
yes,
that's amazing. What a good way to. We just happen to have to go to Hawaii.
yeah, that's true.
Hawaii.
I'm not going to talk more about this because I'm such a sort of deep dive geek about that whole world because there's too many things that I'm like keeping from talking about right now, just so that I don't add another 20 minutes to the show.
Sure.
But if you in the audience want to hear me just sort of wax on about Hollywood surf culture and all that stuff, say so, and maybe we'll do a special short episode just to geek out about that, So
sounds amazing.
Thank you guys for being on. I actually have to go to the airport because Julia is winging her way back towards Denver as we speak,
and then off to Hawaii.
Right, and then and thence to Hawaii. Yes. This Friday, by the way, Scream Screen, Teresa Mercado has Noche de Terror at the C Film Center in Denver. That looks like it'll be a real, because they're going to be playing classic mid-1980s Mexican horror.
Man, there's some good stuff in there.
Cemetery of Terror and Don't Panic are the two that they're playing that both look amazing. So anyway, all right. Have a good evening, guys. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Night.